All right, everybody's favorite topic, pop fence. Everybody's big pop fence guy, Linwood. Linwood, big pop fence guy. So the company that sold the material we used for our pop fence last year has closed their doors, and we're going to try a new product. I think it's going to be more durable. I think it's going to be better for the wind, but time will tell. But I do want to demonstrate how we roll this out and build it. We are replacing the entire 300-foot section of pop fence on the conveyor to this material. So it'll all look the same, and hopefully it's a lot easier to deal with. So we've pre-marked the floor with little pieces of tape every 10 feet. And we're going to do this in 50-foot sections so that they're more manageable. So we'll start by rolling this out and cutting it to length, and then we'll go back and work on putting the poles in. Oh, see if we can do it without falling down. All right, we've got it rolled out to our 50-foot length here. This is our last piece of tape, so we're just going to take some scissors. Doesn't have to be exact, and we're just going to cut the fence. We'll put this aside and come back to it, and we'll start down there with our poles. Okay, so on the end, we're just going to roll this over the top. Don't go too far, just a couple of inches, and that just gives us a little bit of reinforcement here on the end. If you'll hand me, you hold the top, I'll hold the bottom. And we're just going to feed this through. Any opening is fine. And we're going to push it through. I'm trying not to get a splinter here, just like that. I'm going to have to put some gloves on. There we go. All right. Every few inches, maybe 6 or 7 inches or so, we're going to come back through the net. So Lakin, if you can push from there a little bit. There we go. And just keep on pushing. Okay, we go back through it. Okay, and we'll keep on pushing. Okay, go ahead and slide that through. Let's not get too carried away with our overlap there. So once we get to the other poles where we're not doubling over, it ought to slide through a little bit easier.
Just one more.
2 more. One there and one at the bottom. So we want to make sure that we go through as close to the top and as close to the bottom as we can, just so that it's more durable. Excellent. All right, and then we slide it on up to the top. Now, we were using zip ties at the top of each pole last year. And we're going to stick with that method. We just want to make sure we go through a couple of layers of fence and then through the back end of the hammerhead. And then we're going to pull that tight. Cut off the end, but try to do it square so that we don't have a sharp end on the back end. All right, and then there is one pole through. We're going to do the same thing every 10 feet all the way down. When we're putting the poles in, we want to try to follow one seam so that the poles are as vertical as we can make them. So now we're going to come down to our next piece of tape, which is 10 feet from the first. Lakin's going to handle that end. And we're just going to insert it as close to the top as we can and push it through. And then we're going to go down just a little bit more, 6 to 8 inches, and pop it through another square. So the goal is to get these things through as much of the material as we can so that it's sturdy and holds up to impacts from skiers as well as impacts from the wind. And we're going to slide it up. All the way to the top. Another zip tie. Get rid of this one. So we're going to go through the bulk of the material here and then through the back of the hammerhead. Boom. Just like that. So on the end, when we finish off a distance of fence, we want to make sure that we fold it over. So it's essentially going through twice, which will make it a little bit more durable for when we start pulling on it throughout the season and rolling it out and rolling it back up. It gives us a little better anchor. So at the end of the poles, you should see a piece of prusik cord like this. And that is tied on so that when we set it up, this can then loop over the end of the next pole. That way we can pull everything tight and make it look nice. So when we start rolling these up at the end of our shift, we don't want to double the whole thing over because it's hard to keep it together. And then when the morning crew comes out, it makes it really hard for them to roll it out. So we can double it over one panel, which will shorten it a little bit, make it a little easier to roll. So we're going to pick up this first pole and we're going to walk it up to the third pole or until we get to here and lay it down. And then once we get back to this pole, we're just going to start rolling. And we're going to roll it, try and keep our seams together, try and keep it tight so that it's easier to manage and doesn't get chewed up by snowmaking. When we're finished rolling, you'll see a strap that is fixed to the handrail on the conveyor belt, and that will be where we store each section of pop fence. That way it's always stored in the same place and it's easy to deploy in the morning for the next shift. And when they're finished, they should look like that. And then we'll take them and we'll strap them to the railing on the conveyor.